So I'm just gonna ask our two panelists today to introduce themselves briefly. So if Victoria, you want to start?
Yeah, for sure. So I just started my second year and I'm in Waterloo's co-op program. I'm really enjoying it so far. And also, thank you so much for the introduction, Yuni.
No problem. And then Christy.
Yeah, I'm in my fourth year doing a combined major in business and computer science at UBC, and I'm actually not in a co-op program. So if anyone wants to ask about how to find internships, would be really happy to speak on that.
Okay, cool. And then we did have one other panelist from UFT, but I believe she's not able to make it anymore. So with that being said, the first question is, because I know both of you guys are in pretty competitive programs, I would say. So what are the people like in your program? Like, are they super competitive? Are they friendly? What do you find the environment to be like?
So for Waterloo, I'd say the process to get a co-op is generally pretty competitive because like you're competing against not only the people in your year but also the upper years as well. I mean, it can foster a pretty competitive environment, especially when like applications for that come out. But overall, in all my classes, I found the people to be pretty helpful when doing assignments and studying for tests. So yeah, like I'd say it's a pretty helpful environment. It's just that everyone really wants to succeed, and that can that can either be a propellant for you to want to succeed as well, or yeah.
I think for my program, because the cohort is generally pretty small for a combined major, everything everyone in the program is generally like really nice, super wholesome. And if you find like the right group of friends, I think it's like friendly competition where you're just helping each other out. It's like, hey, I'm gonna do my homework now, then you feel the need to do yours as well. It's nothing like toxic where people are constantly in your face like, oh, I have this internship here, like why are you still jobless? Like nobody will say stuff like that. So definitely just friendly competition.
Hmm. And once again, if do you, Christy, do you want to answer the question in the chat for both the business and CS courses?
Yeah, for sure. So it's actually kind of funny because I will be graduating with a commerce degree. I know that sounds like kind of ridiculous, even though I'm going into like a SWE industry. I will be a software engineer when I graduate, but I hold a commerce degree. But I don't think like there's anything wrong with that currently, just because a lot of businesses or companies that are hiring, they don't look at your degree or your grades. I think like you definitely just need to keep in mind what they look at is your skill set. Are you able to actually perform as like a good dev in their company? That's all they really care about. So you don't really need to like worry that, oh, if I'm graduating with an arts degree and I'm in CS, because I know that's a thing as well. I have friends doing combined major in arts and CS, and they'll be holding an arts diploma. That won't discount them from getting jobs as a SWE as well. So those are other alternative paths to get into CS if you'd like to not take the standard sciences.
Hmm. And I guess just another question is, I know we spoke about this a bit in the main panel, but what types of extracurriculars did both of you guys do in high school that you think made your supplementary application stand out?
I can go first for that. So for my program specifically, I know they wanted, or like it was a lot easier to get into this combined major if you had previous CS experience. But by previous CS experience, all I did was I took one high school course on CS, and that was enough to like get me into my program. But I know for probably Victoria can speak better on like how competitive her program is. So I think if you're able to join like hackathons or like join a club that kind of shows you're interested in STEM or just some sort of initiative in that sector, then it definitely helps your application stand out, showing that you're passionate, you're interested, and you're looking forward to joining STEM. So yeah.
Yeah, and so to add on for my program, I think as I've mentioned many times before, Waterloo hosts like specific contests. They have like Pascal, Fermat, Kaylee for a bunch of like different high school grades. They also have Goss, CIMC, CSMC. So just like participating in contests like those and doing well on them is like a very, very good way to boost your application. And also just a note, like if you do poorly in a contest, it won't take away anything from your application. So there's no harm in just trying to apply. And so I think in terms of like for practicing for these contests, you can look at a bunch of past contest solutions and results on the Waterloo website. You can just look up their contests. And then, so personally what I did was I went through like all the past contests from the past years, and I would time myself and do the contests. And then on the actual contest day, I felt more prepared and like had a better understanding of what math contest problems are more like, because they're very different from typical high school math class problems.
Mhm. And if Andrew, you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, thanks. For Christy, can you talk about the breakdown, or rather like how much each discipline is weighted in your program? Because I know on the website, it seems like it's like a business program first. Is that the case for your actual course load?
So for me, I found all my business courses a lot easier than my CS courses, but that just might be how my brain is wired. Maybe like people who find like quantitative things are easier for them, then CS courses will be easier. And it seems like the group projects and business courses are actually what is weighing them down. So I don't know, like I think they're pretty split even, in my opinion. It does look like there's a lot more business courses that you have to take, but if you compare it to an actual science, if you compare yourself to a CS student in science faculty, then basically what's happening is instead of taking all those electives that science students are allowed to take, you're just taking a bunch of business courses. So if your end goal is to graduate as like a SWE anyways to do CS, then the only downside is you don't get to do fun electives, right? Because you're replacing it with business courses. But I'd say it's a pretty fair split. And even though like I know I have some friends who actually decide to go more onto the business route, which is a great thing about the program. You can still choose like to pivot into something that fits you better. If let's say like you realize, oh, coding isn't really for me, I can't do this for life. Maybe you could do like tech analyst or like program management. There's a lot more opportunities for you to diversify yourself within this program.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Okay, thank you for your question. And Karthik, if you want to go, I'm so sorry if I pronounced your name wrong.
Oh no, you got it actually. Yeah. So yeah, it's fine. So I actually have a question that's like catered toward what Victoria said before in the general panel about AIF. So I'm personally in grade 11 now, and I did the CCC last year, the junior one, and I did fairly good. I got the distinction or whatever it's called, but I'm like very invested in competitive programming, and I'm wondering how I can get started on like project development. So you know what I mean, like projects, because you mentioned that like it's very useful to get started on like building stuff and then put it on your portfolio. But there's like app development, web development, mobile development. So you know, there's like a lot, and there's also data science. So I'm wondering like where you would go about and like how you would go about starting, because it's a vast field.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's super great that you're getting started early. And also congratulations on scoring so well in the junior CCC. So yeah, it's great that you're starting to think about this now, because it's something that I didn't think about at all back in grade 11 and grade 12. I'd say first, maybe try to attend some hackathons. So at hackathons, you'll find like very experienced people and like a mix of inexperienced and experienced people. And since you're in a group, they can kind of guide you along the way. And so in the course of like 1 to 2 days, you make like a small project, and from there you can kind of see what you're interested in more. So I know for my first hackathon, I worked with like a bunch of different frameworks and languages and like front end, and also got to see a little bit more of back end. In terms of like side projects, I think there are a bunch of great tutorials online. Free Code Camp on YouTube is a super great channel to follow. I think they have like hour-long tutorials on how to build a side project completely from scratch. So I'd say consider looking into those. I think it's super great that you're taking the initiative to start now. I have I have a bunch of side projects that are like on a post-it note in my room that I'm planning on doing. So yeah, like I think side projects, hackathons are a super great way. I think there are a bunch of different resources online. And yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Okay, cool. And I guess to move on a bit, we can get back to the chat later, but I low-key stalked both of your LinkedIns and I found that Victoria is an incoming SWE at Amazon and Christy has interned at Microsoft before. And I know that Christy doesn't have the co-op program, so would you both want to just elaborate on, for Victoria, definitely the co-op process? I know it's really competitive. And then Christy, for how did you manage to find such a great internship?
Yeah, I guess I'll start off on that. So Microsoft happened to be my first internship. I was very fortunate that got to interview with them, but I don't think, other than being fortunate, there's a lot of work that goes into it. I highly recommend not going through the co-op process, just because for my school, at least, they take a lot of money from you and our job board is not very good in my opinion. They give you resources, as in like there's tutorials on how to like write your resume, how to interview, that sort of thing, but you can find these resources online on YouTube. And I found that not doing co-op gave me a lot more flexibility in terms of my graduation. So because with co-op program, you're required to do 4 terms of work minimum. So without co-op, I am actually only doing 2 terms. I did 2 terms at Microsoft over the summer, and I'm going to be graduating, and I'm currently like looking for other opportunities or maybe going back to Microsoft. So in terms of how you can find that, I think all you have to do is apply to these companies. It's as simple as applying. And it's really nice that you guys are here now and thinking about this, because there's actually a bunch of internships that are open for only first and second year students. And those are the ones I highly recommend applying to, like Microsoft Explore, Amazon Future Engineers, Facebook University, Google STEP, Dropbox has Launch, I believe, and Palantir has a Path program. I can link all these resources below later. And I think like these are the easiest internships you can actually get as a first or second year student, because consider the size of the company. They're so big, they're always hiring for people. So as long as you meet their technical requirement, you're not actually fighting or competing with others to get in, if you think about it, because they're just so big. If you meet that technical requirement, they're able to hire you. So it's actually easier to get into a big company. So don't discount yourself from like applying to those places because you think you're not good enough. As long as you practice and like do the relevant prep work, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, so I actually applied for my Amazon internship externally as well. And I consider myself very lucky to have gone through the resume screening process and everything. And so generally when you apply for internships or like co-ops, for Waterloo Co-op, you have like this huge job board with I think like 1,000 different jobs, like specifically for Waterloo students. And since Waterloo's co-op program is something that's very renowned both in Canada and in the States, I think that when a lot of employers just see the name of the University Waterloo on your resume or whatever, it's like a very big boost when they choose like which kinds of which students to take. I think Waterloo is generally known as like a very big feeder into companies in Silicon Valley down in California. And so basically the process of getting a co-op or an internship through Waterloo Works is just, there's a huge job board and you select maybe 50 companies to apply to, you send your resume and maybe a cover letter. And then for applying externally, I chose to apply externally just because I thought that I could like target the more specific companies that I knew I wanted to work at. And so for Amazon, I applied externally, and then generally the application process is like a coding assessment and then a technical interview. So you might hear a lot of like university students talk about the LEET code grind. So essentially the link that I just posted in the chat is a link to the LEET code website, and there are like a bunch of different coding questions that you generally get asked on in a technical interview. So you can practice like easy, medium, hard questions, and you can also filter by the company, but that's if you buy Leak Code Premium. And basically a lot of students just like grind all these problems really, really hard and try to complete all of them. So they know that they're prepared for the technical interview part of the application process.
Yeah, thank you guys for both of your answers, and for the Thighs who has your hand up. Once again, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the names wrong.
Yeah, it's fine. It's Faz. But so I have a question for Victoria, because I think she mentioned that she applied for an internship at Amazon. So especially since she's in Waterloo and the program there is well renowned, I was just wondering what you think is the major difference between the co-op and internship coming from Waterloo. So yeah.
So I think applying through the Waterloo program, like the co-op board, gets you like a bunch of jobs at, like, some of the companies are not that well known, but it's very specific for Waterloo students only. So only Waterloo students have access to like these 1,000 jobs on the job board. And then for applying externally, you're basically competing with like applicants from all over Canada and the States for a set number of positions, which is why I think I'm like pretty lucky as a second year to have been considered for the Amazon internship, just because like the competition pool was so big. But I find that on Waterloo through the co-op board, it's a lot easier to get interviews, and it's a lot easier to get offers from the Waterloo like specific job board.
Okay, and again, is there like a fee for the co-op program, like in Waterloo?
I think the fee is $700 for each of your study terms. So for the Waterloo co-op program, you have 6 co-ops and 8 study terms. So that would be 8 times 700 so like the $700 you pay on each study term, but it's like you usually make up for it when you're doing your internships.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and just another question that I was thinking of because I know that you guys, for computer science, it's really like the side projects that you're doing. So do you find that the courses you're taking in school help with the job finding process, or is it mainly what you do outside of school?
Personally, I think it's a lot about the extracurriculars you do outside of school, just because like every single student at your university is also taking the exact same courses as you. So in that way, there's not really a way to differentiate yourself from your peers. I know that even for Waterloo, your grades at the university don't really help that much when you're trying to find a co-op. It's more so like your previous internship experience, any boot camps you've done, any side projects you've done, hackathon awards, or things like that.
Yeah, just to echo off of that, I do feel some of the courses are pretty good for getting your fundamentals, like the data structures and algorithms courses. Don't let yourself fall behind if you don't understand on those ones, just because a lot of the technical interview questions to get into the companies you might want to get into are very based upon your fundamental understanding of those courses. So if you're struggling with those courses, that's a pretty big red flag that you need to like actually study up. Whereas like maybe some other CS courses where it's like compilers or like, cybersecurity, these are things you're interested in that you apply to. So maybe like those are relevant if you want to get a job in cybersecurity, but not as relevant for someone who's just doing web dev. So I guess like you really just need to understand which course content is actually just like fundamental basics that you need to understand in order to better yourself at opportunities of finding a job.
Yeah, and just to see the question in the chat, did you find that sports were helpful in your applications, or did you guys play any sports?
I played a lot of sports in high school. So I think like by the end of grade 12, like over the course of 4 years, I'd been in like 10 to 12 sport teams or something like that. And I think I also got nominated for like an athlete award by the end of the year, but I'm not really sure if doing these sports contributed a lot towards my application. I think like definitely it helped to tell the application like the school that you're very well-rounded and that you're able to manage a lot of things at the same time. But I think what is more taken into account are like the things you've done to further your interest in the program you're applying for. So more so like math and CS kind of related extracurriculars.
I am not sporty at all. I did not play any sports, so can't really speak on that. Sorry.
No problem. And then Karthik, if you wanted to go ask your question.
Hello again. So unfortunately, my school doesn't offer like AP, and I don't go to like an IB school. But we were talking about how it could be a big plus. So I was just like actually researching about this, like in grade 9, about like taking AP outside of school. So would you consider that to be like helpful, or is that just like a big burden, like taking it outside of school?
Yeah, I can take that on. So if you're trying to get into a CS program and the thing that's motivating you to take AP is to make university life a bit easier because you have the knowledge, I say don't take the AP program. Just look at the syllabus for the AP course and just learn these things yourself, because I think like you're probably stressed enough with your own schoolwork. Taking on an additional course might just be a bit too much. So if you're confident that you can structure yourself with the course and like just follow online resources, because if you Google or YouTube anything, I'm sure there's plenty of videos explaining just like a small niche concept. So you don't actually need that program if all you're trying to do is help yourself out in the future. Like additionally, you could also search up the syllabus of like university courses. Like let's say, I think Waterloo and UBC both teach Dr. Racket as their first programming language. And that was the huge steep learning curve for me. So if maybe you were able to just like the previous summer brush up on what is Dr. Racket, what is the syntax for this language, and like, what concepts am I going to be learning? Just like understanding those before you go into the course is already a lot of help. So you don't have to take an AP course if you don't want to. I think it might just be like a bit too much time commitment.
Okay, cool. And I saw this question asked by Anita, and if you guys are comfortable sharing, what does a typical day in your university life look like?
I can go first. So right now I'm actually in my co-op program. So I'm working with a company. Basically I wake up at 8, I have my typical work day that's around 8 to 4. I solve any bugs they give me and resolve tickets, mostly working on like front end and back end issues, developing new features, things like that. Since I've never actually been on campus, I'll actually be on campus, I think the same time as a lot of the seniors, the high school seniors in this breakout room. So yeah, my first time on campus will be as a third year, which is pretty sad. So I guess I don't really have a good idea of Waterloo's student life or any on-campus related activities. But there are a lot of like online clubs right now for Waterloo. Like they have a data science club, they have a computer science club. And also if you're a female, Women in Computer Science is a super great club. Not sure if it's offered at UBC, but it's a very, very useful club for women, and it's run online, and there are a bunch of events and conferences and everything.
Yeah, I guess a typical day in my life right now, I took a bunch of courses in my first to third year. So in my final year right now, I'm only taking 3 courses this term. I'm on campus 2 days of the week, which is amazing. And I guess like I just wake up, I go to school for the campus days, and usually I have like group project meetings because of like the business aspect. There are a lot of courses that require group projects, group work, and you're always in meetings doing stuff. So that's kind of like the school aspect. On the days I am off, this is very much a personal choice, but I basically interview every single day I am off of school. So I think a lot of my friends, they might say like school life is more like socializing, going out to eat, that sort of thing. But it really depends on what you prioritize. And for myself at the moment, I just want to like better myself with chances of a full-time opportunity. So just grinding out leak code every day and doing homework and interviewing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that you guys both do co-ops or internships, but aside from that, would you still apply to, for example, like scholarships during your university, or what are some helpful websites that you could provide for even like high school students?
Yeah, so I'm actually making a list of scholarships right now that I am looking to apply to. So I think just I'm Googling terms like girls in STEM, women in tech, women in computer science, and basically just compiling a list of scholarships that I can apply to as an undergrad currently in university. I'm sure there are a bunch of resources online for high school students who are looking to enter university. Upon admission, you're also like automatically considered for a bunch of scholarships. So I think one of them that I got was like the Frank and Janet Hill Scholarship for Women in Math, and that was mainly based off of doing super well in contest scores in contests in high school and having good contest scores. So I think like if you don't want to do any applying like external applications for scholarships, you should try and aim for good contest scores and have a really strong AIF so you can automatically be considered for a bunch of scholarships that the university offers. And also to respond to one of the questions in the chat, I think related to work experience, I think it's important to get jobs related to the field that you want to go into. So for example, I'm not really sure if like a cashier at McDonald's would contribute a lot to getting like when you're applying for a computer science or engineering related program. I think it's important to get experience in what you want to go into and the relevant program. So that's attending hackathons, doing math contests, and things like that. Like I know in high school, money, you kind of like want a lot of money to be able to buy a bunch of different things. And like when a lot of your friends get jobs and they work like several hours a day to buy like new clothes or buy new computers or whatnot, it's very like you might see that and say like, oh, I want to do that too. But I think it's important to consider what your goals are for the long term. So doing actions that are relevant for your long-term goals and kind of envision where you want to end up in like 5 to 10 years. Maybe like it's still working at a cashier in like a store trying to get minimum wage to pay for clothes or whatnot. Or maybe it's like looking further and seeing like, oh, I want to work at Facebook. I want to work at Google. And to do that, I'm going to participate in a lot of hackathons and get relevant experience starting now. Yeah.
And I don't know if Christy wanted to add on to that. I think we were talking about scholarships, if I'm not mistaken, but
Yeah, I personally don't have that much scholarship experience, and I would say it's my fault for not being that good at academics. So I guess like just to jump off of that, like I guess a lot of people say it's okay for you to not be good at academics in CS, which I agree with, but the downside is you don't get scholarships. So that's one thing you should keep in mind in terms of like how you want to prioritize your time. Do you want to study and get high 90s so you can get these scholarships? Or do you want to like put more into social life or put more into job search? Because I think a lot of my friends and myself, what we decide to do is, you know what, we're not going to focus on school as much. We're just going to grind leak code, get a job, and call it a day. So really depends on what you prioritize.
And I think a lot of people were asking about the application process. So I know that we're in like different provinces. So if we want to take for Victoria, how was the OUAC application? And for Christy, what's applying to university like in BC?
Okay, I guess for BC, like I'm not sure if this is still the same thing, but from what I'm seeing my brother's doing, because he's doing applications right now, it's just writing a written application. And after like, I think it's due December 1st for early admissions. And once you submit that, that's all there is. Like there isn't like anything else you have to apply apart from the written and your transcript. But I'm not sure if that's like for every single program, but I believe that is it for sciences. Yeah.
And I believe for BC, is it you apply directly to the university or do you go through a third part? Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize like different provinces.
Oh,
did that.
yeah, because for Ontario, I think it's different, but I think I can
Yeah.
let Victoria talk about that more.
Yeah, so I think for OUAC, you just selected the universities that you wanted to apply to, and then there was like a kind of ranking process for the universities that you wanted to attend. I'm not sure if the ranking actually contributes to the admissions process. And then for some schools, there were like a separate application that you'd have to do. So for Waterloo, there was like the AIF. For Western, or Western Ivy, you had to write like 2 application questions. So it really depends on the university, but for OUAC, I think you just pick the universities that you want to apply to, and then you pay a fee, and then you rank them.
And for, I guess, talking about the AIF for Waterloo, could you talk a bit maybe about the questions, or what are some do's and don'ts for that process?
Yeah, so for the AIF for Waterloo, I basically just put like every single one of my extracurriculars on that form. So I put like all the sport teams I'd done in grade 9, 10, 11, and 12, like all of my contest scores as well. I think there was a very short section where you had to write a blurb about why you wanted to attend Waterloo. And I think I just talked about Waterloo's co-op program, the prestige, and like the name of the school and how that would contribute to my future goals. The Waterloo AIF wasn't too difficult, nor was it too long. I think I finished it in about like an afternoon. No super long application writing processes for that.
Yeah, and Rachel, if you have a question.
Hi, first of all, thank you guys so much for coming and share your thoughts for the future students. I have a question about job opportunities. As you guys mentioned before, it's pretty important, or like it's beneficial to have a job opportunity related to computer science in high school. So I was wondering, because I asked in the chat about, is it hard to get an computer science related job opportunity, and if there's any examples that we can like as a starting up to gain that experience. Thank you.
Yeah, I can start that off. So I don't think you need a job opportunity in CS in high school. So maybe like a better way to put it is you'd want to consider doing more activities or extracurriculars that are related to CS. Like I think one of our people said they were doing competitive programming, like that's one way to do it. Or you could just be attending hackathons. Like DevPost is a great place for you to just see all upcoming hackathons that are happening, and a lot of them are open to high school students, which is really cool. So basically participating in those will allow you to meet a bunch of like people who actually know what they're doing, and you can partner up in a team with them and just learn from them. You also get a lot of resources to like mentors and maybe like APIs, that sort of thing that companies are sponsoring. So those I think are the major high school experiences I would suggest for like bettering your chances at CS, but not exactly like a job you need. I think like for sure if you get an internship in CS between like grade 12 and university, like great job, kudos to you, but that's not like a need, because a lot like realistically that doesn't happen to a lot of people. It might be like 1 in 100. So don't feel like, oh, I didn't get a job in CS during my grade 12 summer. Like there's nothing wrong with that. Just stay on your feet and keep looking for hackathons to join and add those projects to your portfolio.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I don't think it's necessary to get a job. It's definitely a boost when applying to like first year and second year internships if you have some sort of like relevant experience or an internship on your resume already, but it's obviously not the end of the world if you don't. You can also show your interest, like Christy mentioned, by doing a lot of hackathons and doing your own side projects. And I think like doing side projects is one of the best ways to learn about something you're super interested in. So yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. It makes me feel better now. Because like I just thought, like it's important to have like at least an internship, but because like there's people online talking, oh, you need to do that, or else you won't be able to get it. So it's like the stress level is pretty high, and that's why I asked it. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel, for your question. And Joanne?
Oh, hi, thank you for answering that question about job experience that I asked earlier. I'm in grade 10 right now, and I want to apply for the early application, and I believe that's in like November, December-ish. I think that's correct, yeah. And our school has this semester system going on where you're only taking 4 classes at a time. So right now I've been trying to plan out like my courses. I don't have that much freedom right now in grade 10, but there's more freedom in grade 11. So I've been like just like blocking it together, and I want to have all the important classes and such ready before I apply. And because of the semester system, I'm not taking 8 classes at a time. So I want to make sure that and it's also randomly set. So all my important classes in grade 12 might be pushed to the second semester. So I've been like pushing a lot of my important classes for grade 11, and that leaves me with a lot of like empty blocks and spares in grade 12. And I don't know how like that'll look on my like application. I heard that I know that universities don't like when you're too free in grade 12, like if you have too much time, spare time in grade 12. So I kind of want some advice on that, please.
I don't know if this is still relevant because I did graduate like 5 years ago, but I had 3 spare blocks when I was graduating grade 12. So I don't think like having spares really discounts you from being a good applicant. Just make sure like because you're having spares, it's not because you didn't do a bunch of courses that are required. Like as long as you've completed your required courses and maybe you just like finish things faster than other people, then I think having a spare is fine. And I'm not really sure how the semester system is going to affect applications, but from what I heard is like universities understand that the semester system is happening, and they're taking that into considerations in terms of like estimating how students are going to do like in a specific course or whatnot. So I think you should definitely talk with your high school counselor, if anyone, for like questions that are more related to how you can plan out your courses, just because I think different universities are approaching things differently, and maybe your counselor has connections to all of the ones that you want to apply to.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. And I see another hand up from FaZe.
Yeah, so hi, I have another question. This is regarding like the supplementary application. So say, for example, in high school, you take like relevant courses to the program you want to get in, like in university, say you take computer studies or sciences in high school. So when you get to the application, do you have to like mention the courses you took, like computer science courses, or you can omit that because like the transcript says it? Like, what do you recommend?
So personally for me, I refrain from talking about any of my high school courses in any application questions, just because I thought my transcript like did reflect that, like did explain that I took them and everything. And I focused more on like extracurriculars that I felt made me different from all the other candidates applying.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. And I see some other questions in the chat. I'm not sure if anyone wants to unmute, but I guess to end off for a question, because we're almost at 2:30, and I see that a lot of the people here are also females, and Superposition Toronto is dedicated to bridging the gender gap in STEM. So just for a question for both of you, what's one piece of advice you would give to like younger girls who want to go into CS or want even just the STEM program in general that are maybe kind of scared? I don't know.
I would definitely say join clubs that are very like women oriented, or like I think for me, I attended a hackathon that was all women only, and that really was a life-changing experience for me, because like the first 2 hackathons I went to was like anyone could go, and I felt quite intimidated by all the guys in the room who were coming up with these crazy ideas, these crazy projects within 24 hours. And that just kind of scared me a little and made me feel like a bit imposter. But when I was at this all-women hackathon, I really felt that when I had a question and I asked a person from another team, they were there to support me and teach me about like their experiences. And it just felt like I could talk with anyone and not be afraid of getting judged in that sort of environment. So definitely like attending events like that and finding support in like maybe other women engineers around you, that's really good for your mental health, just because there's someone you can relate to and someone you can like share your concerns with.
Yeah, and I'd like to second that as well. I think just finding a bunch of resources and also finding like a super great community where you can like bounce ideas off each other and share like what you're doing, keep each other updated. Like finding a good community with females in STEM is super important. Like there's Wix in university, and then there's also a bunch of like female specific hackathons like Christy mentioned, and also female specific programs. So in the chat over the summer, I actually took part in this like AI for Good lab, and it was a 7-week training program with 30 women across Canada. And I'm sure like that's not the only program that's out there. I think there are a bunch of programs in both like a lot in finance and also in tech dedicated to helping women like succeed in the future. I think there are a bunch of like insight programs, a bunch of conferences you can attend, and yeah, like just don't be afraid to give your opinion as a woman. Don't be afraid to apply to places. It's like being a woman in STEM is pretty fun. It's pretty badass being able to solve like difficult math equations, code amazing programs. And yeah, just if you're interested in it, then I definitely say to go for it.
Okay, cool. If there are any last minute questions in the chat, because I know it is nearing 2:30 and I don't want to hold everyone up too much. But oh, I see that Ankit asked if you guys could share your contact information, maybe your LinkedIn's, if anyone has any questions in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I'll copy paste my LinkedIn profile in the chat. Also, for in the future, like if you want to find an internship or a co-op, I find that having LinkedIn is a super, super great resource. Like you can, instead of like cold emailing, you can message a bunch of recruiters. You just search up like the company and the recruiter, or the company and like software engineering intern, and you can network and meet so many people. So yeah, like if you don't have LinkedIn already, I understand it's high school, but maybe consider getting it for university because you can find so many people on that website.
Yeah, I just want to add on to like the LinkedIn point. I think for resumes, when you're submitting to like jobs in first year, second year, you can only have a 1-page resume, but LinkedIn is kind of the place where you can expand on all your points so that it's longer than a page. So it's like really useful to demonstrate like everything you've done on LinkedIn, and recruiters could reach out to you through there. But I'd also want to add like cold emailing, I find, is actually more effective than LinkedIn, just because it's a bit saturated right now. Everyone is using LinkedIn and they're messaging recruiters there. If you're able to have a recruiter's email and message them directly with like your resume, with why you're interested in working in the company, I find that's usually a bit more effective than shooting like a random note on LinkedIn to a recruiter. So yeah, if you're comfortable with doing cold emailing, I think that's a better resource.
Yeah, and also just a note on like the LinkedIn thing. A lot of the times, like you'll see a bunch of posts with people posting about their success and stuff, and don't let that get to your head. Like you'll get there eventually. I actually have an extension that just literally blocks out my entire LinkedIn feed, just because a lot of the times it can be super toxic. And yeah, so just like focus on your own grind, focus on your own path, and don't let other people get to you.